I used to think that investing was hard, boring, or complicated, but I found the perfect stock investing course that showed me how to invest as a complete newbie. Now I can build wealth in the stock market and do all the things that I enjoy at the same time. Check out the Lazy Investor Stock course and get started on your wealth building journey today.
So what's going on with it, man? It's David W. Williams, also known as Diamond Dave. Happy for everybody coming through. We're going to go ahead and get this in real quick. Let y'all get back to whatever y'all got going. Quick little lunchtime show. So what we're going to talk about is socialism. Hopefully I spelled that properly. And do you know what it is, right? And so one of the reasons why I want to talk about this is because I want people to really get a good understanding of some of these socioeconomic systems. So when they have to get together with their group, they can kind of understand what type of socioeconomic model or what type of economic model do we need to build together to allow us to be successful. And because we're not exposed to a lot of different economic models, we're kind of maybe semi-exposed to maybe a few. We run out of ideas on how things should work. What type of model do we need to build? What type of systems do we need to build, right? And so then as a result, we often struggle in a lot of different areas, right? And so we're going to go through this really quickly. So the first question I want to ask people is, do they know what socialism is, right? Do they think they have a good understanding of what this particular economic model is, what it's based on, what it's based around? Do they know? And the reason why I'm asking is this. One thing I noticed when I kind of got on the internet is that people will speak to things, and then when you kind of ask them, well, explain what you mean by that, or explain what that is to you, they struggle. So I was always very, it was always very interesting to me that somebody could be very passionate about something. Somebody can have a lot of really, really deep feelings around something. And then when you ask them to explain what that is, they struggle, right? So people will tell you that, well, real estate is too expensive, so that means it's going to crash. And you'll ask them, well, what do you mean by too expensive? How does that work in your mind? And they can't explain what they mean. Or they'll say something like, well, real estate has done yada, yada, yada. Okay, well, what does that mean? And then how does that tie into your idea that the real estate market is getting ready to fall? Like, break this down for me so I can understand it. And they struggle, right? And what we have in this world, and I've had to realize, is we have a lot of people with a very surface level understanding of things. Okay, my bad. So that mic check 1 2, mic check 1 2. Okay, my bad. Yeah, I don't know what's up with this audio, man. So let me know if you can hear me. So we seems like we're back again. Okay, let's see, can we get through these audio issues? So that's always been interesting to me, right? That people have these very, very strong beliefs around something, but their understanding is very, very surface level. So we're going to go ahead and knock this out before they drop my audio again. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into it. So here's socialism, right? This is from Investopedia. Socialism is a populist economic and political system that, I think it dropped again. Okay, let me see, I still got it. Okay, so socialism is a populist economic and political system based on collective, common, or public ownership of the means of production. So those means of production include the machinery, tools, and factories used to produce goods that aim to directly satisfy human needs. That's from Investopedia, right? So that's going to be an Investopedia definition. So why is this important to know? A lot of times you'll be in fear factor with falsehoods, okay? So for some reason, when we get into the economic space, we start talking about business, especially when we start talking about how things have impacted Black people historically inside the United States, we get fear factor with a lot of falsehoods. So here's one of the challenges with that definition of socialism. It's often really based on a definition that was created literally probably in the 1800s when we didn't have the current, I would say, digital or computer technology we currently have now, right? So we're talking about this definition was created in a totally different time period where we didn't have the access to technology that we currently have now. When I say technology, I mean in this particular scenario, I mean a lot of computer and digital technology that has kind of changed the way in which people work. It's changed a way in which a lot of businesses operate. It's made the world work differently, right? At least for the West. Now, different other parts of the world is different. And so what a lot of people are trying to do is their definition of socialism is kind of based on that old school definition, or they have a very academic definition of socialism. You get this from a lot of academic leftists or people that have been trained by academic leftists to where their definition of these things only comes from academic literature. It's not based on anything that they've done in the real world. So you can get into these long, drawn out debates with people online where we're debating these academic concepts, and it's not based on anything that they've ever done in the real world. They've never done anything in the real world based on what they claim their belief system is. It's just a lot of different academic concepts, right? And so what I want you to understand is that you're often being fear factored with a lot of falsehoods. So you'll be told that, well, the government is doing 1, 2, 3, that's socialism. Or this particular politician has these ideas, they're a socialist. And then if you don't really understand what socialism is and what it means in 2025, you can fall into this particular fear factor or this falsehood pattern. And that's why, me and his brother had a really good conversation last night on the live talk, and we were talking about IPOs. First thing I asked him is, what's your definition of an IPO? Because if we have two different definitions of the IPO in the process, you're believing one thing about it, I'm believing something different. So it doesn't matter my opinion of it, because we got to figure out what our definitions are so we can get to some type of common ground, right? So it wasn't that I didn't believe that he knew what the IPO process was, as I wanted to understand what his definition was first. Then I can give him my definition. Then we can kind of figure out, if we can somewhere get to some type of common understanding and something, now we can build from there. But when you ask the average person, what is socialism to them, they don't know. So then what are you scared of if you don't know what it is? Or somebody will tell you socialism doesn't work. Well, how do you know it don't work? If you don't know what socialism is, how do you know it doesn't work? So then they'll say, well, look at Venezuela. Venezuela is not socialism. See, so if I don't know what socialism is, I can let somebody tell me they are socialist and they'll be lying to me, but I don't know because I don't know what socialism is. So let me give an analogy. 99% of y'all have never met a person that's probably over 50 keys of cocaine in your life. Guarantee you that. You've never known a person that's probably over 50 keys of cocaine in your life. You never met somebody that, when I say over, what I mean is that they can get more than 50 keys of cocaine. You've never met somebody like that in your life. Why? Because it's very hard to meet those kind of people. And I'm talking to like an older audience. Now it's impossible. It's impossible now in 2025, right? But anybody that was around in the 80s and 90s, early 2000s, you've never met anybody get over 50 keys of cocaine in their life. Okay, so since you've never met nobody get over 50 keys of cocaine in your life, a rapper can tell you that I was a big-time drug dealer. Well, I don't know what a big-time drug dealer looks like because I've never in my life met anybody that can give over 50 keys of cocaine. So I think a big-time drug dealer is Jay-Z. That's my reference point because he said he was a big-time drug dealer. So I think he's a big-time drug dealer, right? Because I don't know what a big-time drug dealer looks like, right? So because you don't know Felix Mitchell. You never met the guy. You don't know Freeway. You never met him, right? You never met any of those people up out of Detroit. So you'll let a rapper tell you so you think 50 Cent was a big-time drug dealer. It's cool. So when you don't know, a person can tell you anything and you either going to go with it or not go with it because why? I don't know the difference. So if Maduro in Venezuela tells me he's a socialist and I don't know what socialism is, I think he's a socialist. So then everything he does, I think, is a representation of socialism. But Maduro's not a socialist, and neither was Chavez. Neither one of those guys are socialists. They weren't, right? But if I don't know what socialism is, Maduro or Chavez will tell me I'm a socialist, but they're not socialists. Then I look at what they're doing and I say, okay, well, that's socialism, but they were never socialists, right? So that's one of the challenges we have is we have people that don't know what something is, but they form an opinion around it. They have beliefs around it, but they really don't know what it is. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? So you can now be fear factored with falsehoods. So when you're looking to solve a problem in your group, you don't even know, you may not know what to investigate to solve the problem because you've already been scared away from certain economic models by people on the internet, people that get paid to keep people in a state of fear, people that get paid to just get on the internet, get on television and just talk in circles, and that's how they make their money. And then you're moving, operating under that particular belief system, right? So I never let somebody scare me with an economic system. That's impossible. Because my question is, just because you're scared of it, why should I be scared of it? Right? I never let somebody scare me with economic system. My goal is to understand these particular economic systems and do they have the ability to solve the problems for my group? If they don't, we discard it. If they do, we try to figure out how to incorporate it into what we got going on. That's the only thing I'm worried about. But you can't scare me with it. Okay? So let's keep going before they drop the audio again. So I put this question up on my YouTube page, right? I said, 5 people start a business. They all work in the business. They are the only workers in the business. The 5 split the ownership of the business. My bad. 20%. So it's 20, 20, 20, 20, 20. How would you describe this business relationship, right? Some people said that it'd be a business co-op. That's 43%. 22% said 5 people working in the business together. 31% said group economics. 4% said socialism. Okay? So let's go back to the definition of socialism. Based on collective, common, or public ownership of the means of production. So those means of production include machinery, tools, and factories used to produce goods that aim to satisfy human needs. Again, the issue with this definition comes from almost over 100 years ago. Well, we're living in a totally different world. So if we create a tech company where there's very little machinery, there's no factory, and there's very little tools, but we all own it, is that socialism? See? Because there's corporations now where they're utilizing very little machinery, they're utilizing very little tools, and they don't need a factory at all. And they have multi-billion-dollar organizations, right? So their infrastructure footprint is very, very light. Yes, they run on some servers, but they don't need factories to produce and manufacture. That's not how they make their money. So going back to the question that we were talking about, right? This can be defined as socialism. Now, people know the term group economics because that's been floated around a lot, right? I think that comes out of like Kwanzaa, if I'm not mistaken, right? A lot of times they use the term business co-op because they know people have been scared away from the term socialism. So yeah, we can create a business co-op where everybody that works in the particular co-op, right? Everybody that works in the co-op has ownership in the business, okay? But I can start a corporation with 5 people and we all do all the work in the business, right? And we own the business. Wouldn't that be considered socialism? Because there's no private ownership of the business where one person owns the business and the other 4 people work for them. Now, people can't imagine that. In their mind, every business has to work a certain way because that's all they've been exposed to, right? So that's one of the biggest challenges. But there are a lot of businesses around where there's 3 or 4 people working in the business. The problem is 3 of those people don't have any ownership in the business. Only one person owns a business and they just hire 3 or 4 other people to work in the business for them. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? You see this with a lot of medical offices where one person will open up the medical office. They'll staff it. They'll put other doctors in there. It's owned by that top person. And the other 3 or 4 of the doctors, they just work in there. They get paid, and then they got a little small staff footprint. But it's owned by one person. So only one person actually owns the business. Everybody else just works in there. But they can give everybody in their ownership of the business. And now you're invested in that particular business. So again, the challenge comes into where people really don't understand this stuff. They're engaged in a lot of they're engaged in a lot of academic debates. When you ask them, where are you going to go out in the real world and show this in the real world? They'll stop talking to you because they're not. They're just going to have a debate over it. But when you ask them, okay, what are you going to go out in the real world and actually show this in the real, they're going to stop talking. So when you look at the brother Raz Hassan, and he was talking about doing lending in the Cleveland area where it's going to be no interest rate lending and building a model based around that, right? So you'll have a lot of people that get on the internet and talk about the banking system, yada, yada, yada. Okay, cool. But when are you going to go out in your community and now create a structure to where people can get access to capital, but not under that other model where they're paying a rate? When you going to go do that? Never. We're just going to sit on the internet and talk about it and debate and say who got the best answer, who got the best idea. So I want to really encourage you to get outside of those communities because they never going to get nothing done, right? Stop debating with people, right? Go and do something. And then once you do it, then you can speak to the fact that you've done it and let them keep debating because that's really what they're good at. Everybody's not good at the same thing. I'm not good at winning debates. I'm focused on actually trying to get it done. So I want to really encourage you to stop doing that type of stuff with folks, because especially with us as, and you see this also in the Anglo spaces, but I got a primarily Black audience. We often sometimes think the debate and the going back and forth is the real work, and the real work is actually going out here and doing the real work and teaching people around you how to get it done and letting them go do it. So when Ross figures out or becomes really, really successful at doing the lending at no interest rate, right? I will ask him, can he come back on and talk about that particular model? Because that's something that people can learn from, because one of the biggest issues we have is that we can't get access to capital because we're dealing with a rate that is prohibitive to us getting access to the capital. So the rates are quote unquote predatory, so we can't get it. Stop debating with people, try to figure out how to solve that particular problem in your local area. Right? So that's the first thing, right? Let's keep going. Do you consider Amtrak socialism was the next question, right? So a lot of people that tell you, you know, we're against socialism, yada, 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 this, that, and the third, we against it. Okay, cool. Do you consider Amtrak socialism? So some of y'all may not know what Amtrak is. It's a railroad, right? So do you consider Amtrak socialism? I asked the audience that. 82% said no, 17% said yes. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the knowledge on the situation. Congress created Amtrak in 1970. Amtrak is structured like a corporation, but the federal government owns the company's stock. It was supposed to be self-supporting, but it's never earned a profit. It's consumed more than $50 billion in federal subsidies over 5 decades to 2020. That's from a particular website called downsizingthegovernment.org/Amtrak. 2020, Amtrak had revenues of $2.1 billion, expenses of $4.1 billion, loss of $2.0 billion. It's been receiving about $2 billion a year in federal aid, received $3.7 billion in pandemic aid in 2020, 2021. The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act of 2021 provided a $66 billion infusion of subsidies for rail, direct funding of Amtrak, and grants to the states for rail projects. So here's something that I believe about Amtrak. I would call Amtrak a state-owned enterprise. You see a lot of these in China, right? Where the government creates a business. I call them state-owned enterprises. People will argue and say Amtrak's not a state-owned enterprise. It's got a charter from Congress. It's called a federal something type business. To me, it's the same thing as a state-owned enterprise, right? Amtrak is fully owned by the federal government of the United States, right? It's not even a profitable corporation or profitable company, right? So is Amtrak socialism then? If the government owns the business of Amtrak, is Amtrak socialism, right? So when people rail against Amtrak, I ask, is Amtrak socialism? Here's all the Amtrak routes going all across the country. So there was an issue because this type of commuter rail is competing with airline flights, and it can't compete with airline flights. It just can't. So we had a lot of rails closed down. A lot of them got mismanaged too. We still use rail to push freight. That's still profitable, but passenger rail is not as profitable as it was 100, 150 years ago. So the government decided to keep these particular rail lines open and to continue to give access to people to travel this way. We'll create the business and we'll run it even if we got to run it at a loss. Is this socialism? Right? So these are the kind of questions people got to kind of ask themselves, right, when they're coming up with these definitions. If you get on the Amtrak, are you disgusted because it's socialism? So if you are just so against socialism and you get on Amtrak, are you disgusted? Because of socialism. So I just can't stand the fact that, right, there's this business called Amtrak. But Amtrak, especially on the East Coast, especially between like DC, Philadelphia, that kind of DMV area, but also up into New York, it does a lot of business travel, right? There's a lot of business travel in that particular lane, and those tickets are not even cheap. I was going to go from the DMV area into Philly during the holidays. Those tickets were very expensive. Those tickets are not cheap at all. Now, I don't know how much it costs to run the rail, right? But it's not like it's a cheap ticket. It's not like Metro Bus. Okay. So they do a lot of really, really good, I would say, business travel in that DMV area up to New York, back down to Philadelphia, back into the DMV area for a lot of business travels. A lot of people get up every morning. They jump on the Amtrak to get to work, right? So they do have a need there. But what I really want to encourage you is to learn what these actually economic models are and to go create econ models that work for you and your group. Stop letting people scare you away from stuff because they feel a certain way about an econ model, but they've never done anything in the real world. They just want to argue on the internet. That won't solve any problems for you and your group. It won't. You can win the internet argument, and when you get off the internet, you and your group gonna have the exact same problem. So nothing has changed, right? So what I want you to really understand is that learn what these models actually are. There's more state-owned enterprises in the United States. I would argue that there's something called citizens. There's a, I don't want to say the wrong word, so I'm gonna give you the actual understanding of it. There's a way in which the state of Florida had to create an insurance company. They made it a nonprofit. The state of Florida had to do it because people in the state of Florida couldn't get private insurance for their house. Is that socialism? Right? So the state of Florida had to go in and create an insurance company, make it a nonprofit, right? I believe the taxpayers are on the hook if I don't know which particular word, I really believe the taxpayers are providing the reinsurance of it. Because the insurance market in the state of Florida for homes was so weak because all the insurers left because of all the hurricanes. Is that socialism? Why doesn't the state of Florida say, hey, you know what? If you can't find home insurance at a price that makes sense to you, you're just not going to have insurance. Why would they go in and create the insurance for the people in the state of Florida? Why is that their job? And, you know, Florida's supposed to be this super conservative. We want the government out of our business. He's not talking about eliminating the property tax on the state level. But yeah, they showed in there and created the insurance because people in the state of Florida could not get insurance, right? People was getting their policy dropped. The insurance was prohibitive. So they said they need to do something to make sure that people can get insurance. So these are the kind of questions you got to ask yourself when you're looking at this type of stuff, and look at it comprehensively, not just, I know this one person on the internet and they said this one thing. And so because I like what they say, that has to be the thing. It may not be that way. That's just what they said, right? Your job is to make sure that you understand it for yourself, because again, it may make sense for you and your group to create something in which we all have ownership in it and we all share in the profits, and that's how we move on. It may not make sense. It depends on the situation, right? So one person owning something privately and then everybody else coming in to work for them, that may not make sense for this particular situation. It may make sense in another situation, but stop assuming that this one model got to make sense in every situation, because it may not make sense, right? So that's why I really encourage people, learn what these particular economic models are, learn how they can be a little bit different kind of based on when they were initially defined. When a lot of these definitions around capitalism and socialism were defined, we didn't have all this technology we currently got right now. Right? It was about land ownership and now going into the Industrial Revolution. We're post-Industrial Revolution right now. We're post that in America. So we're still trying to operate on a lot of these old definitions that was literally at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, when the people that owned all the land was able to control everything because they owned the land that was going to have to be used to do the Industrial Revolution. We're past that stage now, right? We're in the stage now where people got their whole company up in the cloud. Right? Their footprint is in the cloud. They have very little physical footprint over their organization. Or they got a very, very small physical footprint and they got a large digital footprint. When you got a person that's doing e-com, they're doing millions a year in e-com sales. They're running a 5-person warehouse business, but the majority of their business is on the Amazon web server. That's the majority of their business. The majority of their business is not this large warehouse and we got to do 10,000 people to produce this product. That's not their business. We're past that stage in the West, right? So that's what I want people to really kind of think about. But I want to really encourage you to learn this stuff on your own, and then learn how we can maybe sometimes mix and match stuff to figure out how to solve problems in our environment, as opposed to being fixed in something based on these economic systems and believing, well, if it's not this way, it won't work, and you're missing out. And then stop letting people tell you that they're this or that, right? And that's not really what they are. We got a bunch of dudes telling you that they're libertarians, and they got government contracts for defense. Now, when I was raised up, libertarians believed in non-aggression, which means that the government should not be involved in aggressive acts against other governments. So they believe in something called a non-aggression idea, where the government should be about defense, but it shouldn't be aggressive towards other people. You got libertarians like Peter Thiel, the guy that runs Palantir, Elon Musk, calling themselves libertarians, right? They small government guys, and they made all their billions off government contracts, right? Elon has still, when has he ever took a product directly to the consumer and done that type of business? Everything is, I'm finna run to the government and I'm gonna get me some money off the government. There's nothing wrong with that. That's how you get wealthy. But he's telling you he's a libertarian. No, he's not. Neither is Peter Thiel, because their money comes from relationships with government. They get direct government contracts, right? So when I don't know what this stuff really means, I let people tell me they something, but in real life, they're doing something totally different. And that's how they get their money, right? But then you're trying to uphold a standard that you believe that should be because of what you think this stuff is about. But that's not what they're doing. Maduro's not a socialist. Neither was Chavez, right? Neither one of those guys are socialists. Okay. The people that was before them, they weren't capitalists, right? Venezuela has had an issue for a very, very long time of 5 people in Venezuela want to make all the money and don't want nobody else to make no money except them. It don't matter what they call themselves. So you have 5 people doing that before Chavez took over. Chavez took over. He created a group of 5. It's the same thing. They keep doing the same platform. It's 5 people say we want to make all the money, but can't nobody else make no money but us. That's not socialism or capitalism. That's 5 people want to make all the money and nobody else can't make no money but us, right? So that's what I really, really encourage you to do. We at the 29-minute mark. Don't want to be here too long. If we got any questions, comments, or disagreements, here's your opportunity to come through, and then we're gonna get up on out of here. And I appreciate everybody for being patient with this audio. I don't know what's going on with that. So that's posted. Let me go through these comments before we bounce out of here. So Cedric Ware, man, appreciate this, the super sticker, man. Big up to you and where you at. Hope you staying warm up there in the cold. So big up to Cedric Ware, man. He gonna be the sponsor of the show. What's up, Miss Phoenix out of Toledo? GC, what's up with it? Mr. Davis, what's up? Miss Ty, how you feel? Drop 16 say, I believe it's a mix of principles between capitalism and communism. So drop 16 to me is that, from my understanding, is that one, there's never been a communist state in the history of the world. So many people that claim they believe in communism, they try to engage in socialism to approach a communist state. What's up with it?
Hey, can you hear me?
Drop 16, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me? Hello?
Let me see. I can't hear you. Okay, drop 16. We'll keep reading out the comments and come back in when you get a chance, because I couldn't hear you. Yeah, so there's never really been a communist state in the history of the world. So y'all can hear him. So that's my end. That's on my audio. So I don't, like I say, man, I'm having audio issues. I don't know what's going on. So a lot of times people will say, let me see, can I hear Miss Michelle? Hello?
Mr. Diamond, can you hear me?
Anybody?
Mr. Diamond, can you hear me? Good afternoon.
So Michelle, do me a favor, speak up one more time.
Good afternoon.
Yeah. So I can't hear anybody. So I don't know what's going on with my audio. I apologize to y'all. I'm having audio issues. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and close it out, see if I can get these audio issues fixed. And then we're going to go ahead and I'll go ahead and bounce out because I don't know what's going on with my audio. I have no idea. I can't hear her. Y'all can hear her. So it got to be something on my end. So I appreciate everybody for coming through. Y'all stay safe, man. Talk to y'all later.